Tango and Cash. Welcome to Maniac Movies. I do updates Wednesdays and Fridays, and let's talk about one of arguably the most over the top 80s buddy action cop movie of all of them.
Meet Ray Tango. He likes money,
Easy come, easy go.
but doesn't bother with cash. Meet Gabe Cash. He won't dance around trouble and doesn't mind stepping on toes.
I hate you karate guys.
So this came out in 1989, which was towards the end of it was obviously towards the end of the 80s, but it was also towards the end of that over the top, ultra tough guy action movie phenomenon. You know, it was moving more into special effects territory, and we had, the special effects boom of the 1990s, and that kind of killed out the classic tough guy action hero. But, this was one of the last ones, and obviously coming at the end of a cycle, it's also going to be one of the craziest ones. This movie is so silly and so over the top, but it's also really entertaining. So, stars Sylvester Stallone as Tango, Kurt Russell as Cash. And I will say that for buddy movies, usually a buddy movie establishes that one of them is the lead and one is the sidekick. And this movie doesn't do that. And actually, aside from The Rock, the thing with Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage, this is about the only buddy movie I can say that really that doesn't do that. That doesn't say, okay, this guy's the actual hero and this guy's just kind of trailing along behind him. Like Lethal Weapon, Rush Hour, the sequels to Die Hard. The original Die Hard wasn't a buddy movie. But yeah, just typically when you have a buddy movie, you do that. But this one doesn't do that. This is very much just both of their movies. It's Stallone and Russell together, and apparently it was originally supposed to be Patrick Swayze in Kurt Russell's role, which I find hard to imagine because Patrick Swayze, I don't really remember ever having any kind of like comedic abilities. I don't remember him ever being in a funny movie. Like he was in some stuff that was supposed to be funny, but it wasn't. But regardless, we definitely got the better actor with Kurt Russell. Patrick Swayze could be great in some things. He was great in Point Break, but yeah, and apparently Patrick Swayze passed on this to do Roadhouse. So I think that's a bit of a wash for his career. Because this movie was a huge budget thing and it made some money, but it was also such a troubled production that I don't think it ever turned a profit. This was a very, very troubled production. And after watching the movie and then finding that out, the movie makes a lot more sense because this does feel like a very lopsided, awkward movie at times. But it's a lot of fun, and a lot of that has to do, honestly, with how just zany the movie's willing to be. And Kurt Russell. I mean, Kurt Russell's fantastic and everything. He's absolutely one of my favorite actors. And, he's still cool to this day. He's still making good movies. He was in Bone Tomahawk about 4 or 5 years ago. It's one of the better horror movies of the last 10 years. But, yeah, he's great as the character of Cash. And apparently Cash was written as sort of a parody of the Mel Gibson character in the Lethal Weapon movies, which was a role Kurt Russell apparently turned down, and I'm sure kicked himself in the ass for, because those movies turned out to be massive. But, and I don't know why he turned it down. But he did this, and yeah, he's really great as this sort of classic bending the rules, ass kicker, guy's guy. It's great. In one scene he gets shot and he's wearing a vest, so it just the vest catches it. It doesn't really hurt him, but he's mad. He's like, man, this T-shirt cost me $9, which I can absolutely identify with because I rarely spend any real money on my clothes. But the other half of this buddy team is Sylvester Stallone. Mm, not quite as good. Sylvester Stallone is great at two kinds of roles. Sylvester Stallone is great at playing grizzled loners, and he's great at playing kind of down and out losers. Basically, he's great at either being Rambo or Rocky, variations of those two characters. Now, that's not to say that he hasn't been great in movies outside of those two franchises. I would say his best movie is Copland, which is a fantastic and very overlooked movie, but in that one, he was a down and out loser cop. So, he doesn't have a lot of range as an actor, which is why he was kind of never able to get he was never quite able to catch up to Schwarzenegger, because Schwarzenegger actually does have some range. But here he's playing this Wall Street broker by day, cop by night type thing, where he's supposed to be the super genius financial whiz, and he just does the cop thing for the adrenaline. He just likes the rush of it. And you don't ever really buy Stallone in this role, and Stallone's honestly at his best in this movie when he's bouncing off of Kurt Russell, because when they start shouting at each other, you kind of just feel like you're watching the battle of the egos, between these two actors, because at this time, Kurt Russell has always been like a cult phenomenon type actor, while Sylvester Stallone was a megastar for about 5 years in the mid to late 80s. So you're kind of watching a guy trying to catch up to another guy in real life. And, obviously Stallone is really known for sort of hijacking productions. He's directed several of his movies, but even then, he tended to assert his will on the movies, and he did with this one as well. And so when they're really going at each other, when they're really shouting at each other, it works pretty well. But when Stallone's just trying to be this glasses, suit and tie type, you never really buy it. And but it doesn't hurt the movie all that much because the movie's so goofy that it hardly matters. I mean, this is a movie that literally starts out with with a black screen, then Sylvester Stallone says, "Let's do this," and then the fake '80s hip hop music starts blaring like fucking Axel Foley from Beverly Hills Cop is about to go sliding across the hood of a car wearing a stupid Letterman's jacket, and you're like, "Oh my God, this is the '80s." But yeah, so we get introduced to Tango first, and Tango's doing this big drug bust outside his jurisdiction, where he he basically plays chicken with an 18-wheeler, shoots at it, the thing slams on brakes, and for some reason, both guys in the front seat go flying through the windshield. I don't know how the hell that happens, because that wouldn't happen in a car, let alone an 18-wheeler, which will not stop on a dime. But and one of the two guys is a recurring villain in the movie. Robert Zadar, I think is his name. He was the Maniac Cop. Whoever played the Maniac Cop in those movies. But the guy with the really big jaw, he had some sort of bone growth disorder where his jaw kept growing into adulthood. But yeah, and then to illustrate his point, because they're like, "You stopped this car for no reason, and you're outside of your jurisdiction. You're gonna fry for this." And they check the gas because it's an 18-wheeler gas truck. And they check the bag. It's like, "It's just full of gas," and Stallone shoots it, and everyone thinks it's gonna explode. But then cocaine starts pouring out of it, so there was like a double layer on the thing between the gas and the cocaine. And all I was thinking is, goddamn, he was really sure that that second layer was pretty dense, because the bullet seems like it could have just gone through both of them and still caused the thing to explode. But whatever. And then his boss shows up, played by Jeffrey Lewis, who's a that guy actor. He's been in a ton of stuff. I mostly know him from The Devil's Rejects. He was the guy in the country western band that gets kidnapped by Otis, Banjo and Sullivan. And in this movie, he is rocking the best toupee I've ever seen. It's god awful. It looks like someone just sat a rug on top of his head. It's from the first scene he was in, I was like, "Oh my God, that looks so bad." And I kept thinking that was going to be a joke in the movie. Like at one point, someone was just going to pull it off his head. But no, we were supposed to think that was his real hair. So, yeah. But and then we get introduced to Cash, and this pretty cool scene where he uses this. It turns out Cash has this gadgets, has all these like weird gadgets and stuff that a buddy of his makes, and he has this one that's basically a boot cannon. And while I don't know how many times you would practically use a cannon that's lodged into the heel of your shoe, he does use it in this instance because he's diving out a window and he shoots back with his boot cannon at the guy who just tried to kill him in his apartment. And they have this pretty cool chase sequence through a parking garage. It's a really big parking garage where Cash, appropriates this one guy's car who's all pissed off, and then the guy who tried to kill him steals this big ass truck. And the funny thing is, this truck, parking garages have that thing, the clearance that says how big a vehicle can be that can fit in this garage. And I don't know how this truck got in because the truck is clearly too big for the garage. It keeps hitting like the lighting fixtures and crap, so it's just breaking everything as it goes. But it's a good little action sequence, and this kind of establishes the difference between Tango and Cash and the way they do things. That Tango kind of plans very carefully ahead of time, while Cash just is making shit up as he goes. And Tango's more like, he sits in his office. He doesn't really seem to talk to anyone except for his immediate superior, Jeffrey Lewis's character. While Cash is kind of like the dude down in the bullpen who has all these friends, and they'll let him bend the rules and look the other way if he wants to like rough up a suspect, which he does early on. So, it establishes that these are two very different cops who do things very differently, but they're also kind of like the top guys in the town. I believe this takes place in L.A. because they have this scene where they're both looking at the newspaper, and they're both on the front page with their respective busts. But that puts a big target on their chest because the local crime boss, played by Jack Palance, and if you don't know who Jack Palance is, he's a unique fella. He's been dead for quite a while. He's probably best known for City Slickers and the original Batman '89. He was the crime boss, the guy that was Jack Nicholson, the Joker's boss before he turned into the Joker. You are my number one guy. Like, that's just the way he talks. I've seen him in so many movies. He has a weird cadence. The way he talks is just, he always talks like he's really having to think about his next word. So he's a weird guy. He plays this role exactly the way he did play Carl Grissom in Batman. Like, he's very strange. He's very strange. but he's this sort of big like shot caller in the town that the cops aren't even aware of. He has two underbosses beneath him. One Marco, I believe. I don't remember the other, but it's basically a Latin guy and Asian guy. And the Asian guy is played by James Hong. James Hong, who was the main villain in Big Trouble in Little China. And James Hong is great. I actually saw him at a convention, and he looks friggin' exactly the same. This dude, he hasn't aged since The Vineyard. If you haven't seen that movie, he directed it. It's got one of my favorite lines ever, where he says, "Kill the eunuch." But yeah, James Hong's great in this movie. But Jack Palance is the main villain. He has 200. And of course, James Hong is in charge of the East Side because he's from the East, and the Latin guy's in charge of presumably the West Side. So Tango and Cash are busting these guys' little operations left and right and cost them a lot of money. And Jack Palance is like, we're gonna set them up. And that's basically what the movie is that Tango and Cash get set up and they have to clear their name and stop the big bad guy. Yeah, that's the whole flick right there. But it's pretty entertaining, and it's got a lot of good action sequences, particularly in the prison. The prison sequence is actually my favorite part of the whole movie. So because Tango and Cash do get set up for murder, and they do go to prison briefly. you know, that scene is pretty funny because they're both put on trial for murder that they're framed for, and they're set up obviously, and they get told that okay, well, if you plea, we'll give you a deal, and you'll only do 18 months. I'm sitting there thinking, 18 months for murder, okay. They go, that's a pretty damn good deal, honestly. So they're told if they plea, and then Tango does this whole eloquent speech where he's like, I hope that what happens during this trial will not reflect poorly upon my brother officers. And then Cash gets up, and everyone's like, no, 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 don't talk, don't talk. And then Cash gets up, and I just want to say, this fucking sucks. This blow, it's hilarious. Like, Kurt Russell's awesome in this movie. And so they get sent to prison, and then there's this whole long sequence in the prison. Clint Howard, you remember Clint Howard, squirrely little weird, Ron Howard's brother, the ice cream man. He's Stallone, Tango's cellmate, and he's called Slinky. And he's just this weird guy who plays with a slinky, while Kurt Russell's cellmate is a massive black man who has wallpapered the cell with pictures of naked white women, which was kind of a funny joke. So yeah, and you have Teri Hatcher in here also as she's Stallone's sister, but she's also Kurt Russell's love interest. So, and good God, Teri Hatcher's first scene, she looks like she just tripped out of a Paula Abdul music video. Like, her outfit is so atrociously 80s. It's like a little bowler hat with a jacket with big shoulder pads, and then what looked like a negligee top. It was the most jacked up shit. But and she has this whole thing where Stallone's her big brother, and he's really overprotective of her, and she's a professional dancer, so she's pretty prominent in the movie. Teri Hatcher from Lois and Clark, the old TV show, and Desperate Housewives, the slightly less old TV show. But yeah, she's fine in the movie. So yeah, that's and apparently she actually replaced. She was also a last minute replacement. I don't remember if there was a good explanation for why, but I think it had something to do with trying to find someone that looked like they were looked a little bit more related to Stallone, because Teri Hatcher has kind of dark coloring like Stallone does, and I think the original actress was more of a light-skinned blonde actress, so they figured get someone who actually does. And I respect it when movies do that. I hate it when movies have that thing where they're family, but they look so different. It's like one of them has red hair and the other one. It just I appreciate it when they make the effort to have the actors actually look like they could be related. So yeah, this is a good, fast-paced movie. The first half is definitely better than the second half, but if you like over-the-top 80s movies, this is a really entertaining over-the-top 80s movies. If you're a fan of either of the lead actors, it's interesting seeing Stallone try and stretch, even if he's not quite pulling it off. And Kurt Russell's great in this. This is very much within his wheelhouse of just a smart-mouthed badass. Kurt Russell never quite wanted to be the stalwart action hero. He always wanted to be a little different, a little eccentric. So he's good, and this is a very similar role to his role in Big Trouble in Little China, honestly. So yeah, it's good for those actors, and it's a bit forgotten because it's never gotten a special edition, which I don't get. Like I had to order the Blu-ray; it's actually hard to find, but it's never gotten a good special edition release. And like Stallone's movie Cobra, which no one liked Cobra, that got a special edition release. Like why not give this a legit special edition? But yeah, so I'm getting into spoilers from here on out, but yeah, it's a good hard R 80s action movie, and it's a good buddy movie. So what happens is, you know, that right from the point when Jack Palance is introduced, he has this weird thing with his mice. He has pet mice on his desk, like Zorg in The Fifth Element, with that weird pet elephant thing he had on his desk. And he's always like fondling the mice. And I swear to God, when I was watching, I was thinking he's just gonna crush those mouse. I really thought he was just gonna go sprack and crush the mice. I was really worried about these mice safety, and that did not change later in the movie. But so yeah, he sets them up. They go to prison, and they have to bust out of prison. They have this whole long sequence. So Jack Palance has a henchman played by Brian James, and he's kind of he was originally written as a fairly minor character, but Brian James convinced him to increase his screen time some, and he did it by putting on a really silly Cockney accent that sounds really fake. And Brian James is probably best known for his role in Blade Runner. He was the replicant at the beginning that kills the guy during the interview, and then later on he gets into a fight with Harrison Ford. He has that famous line, "Wake up, time to die." But Bruce Campbell, in his autobiography, Bruce Campbell, Ash from the Evil Dead movies, alleged that Brian James had a massive cocaine problem in the 80s and early 90s, which might explain why he tended to play his roles very big, and that's definitely there's no difference here. He's really going for the Popeye crazy guy look. But so they go to the prison, and then it turns out they were supposed to go to a minimum security prison, but they go to a supermax, and like half the guys there know who they are, and like they arrested a lot of them. The place is in the middle of a riot when they get there. It's just like actively on fire. They have this whole long weird sequence where they're talking in the shower when they first get to the prison. They're both naked. It's like this is a long conversation for two guys that are hanging dong. They even work in a drop the soap joke. So they go to their cells and they get out of their cells, and it kind of seemed like they were just coming and going. When my understanding of maximum security prisons is you have yard time and that's about it. But they just kind of walk in and out of their cells, and they try and kill him in the laundry room by electrocuting him. That scene actually involves some legit good acting from Kurt Russell, because there's this whole thing where Kurt Russell tells him, "Okay, don't panic." He tells Sylvester Stallone, "Don't panic. You know, we're gonna figure our way through this." And Stallone just keeps murmuring to himself, "Don't panic. Don't panic. Don't panic." And because they're completely surrounded by people that want to kill him. Robert Zadar, I hope I'm getting that name right, the dude that Stallone busted at the beginning, is obsessed with killing him. He's like, "Bring them to me." No, everyone's kind of overacting in this movie. But during this scene, Kurt Russell just finally goes, "You know what? If someone wants to cut my throat, then just go ahead and fucking do it. You can bowl with my fucking head for all I care." And then they string him up and they drop him into water, then shock the water. And Kurt Russell kind of, yeah, like he does. He kind of is just when he thinks he's about to die, and he says to Stallone, "Just don't worry about it, man. I'm good." Like it was actually kind of a heartfelt moment where he's just kind of saying, "Yeah, there's nothing you can do. This is happening with or without." You know. So they stage their big escape, and that leads into the famous scene quoted from "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia," where they're like, "Okay, you can't get shocked so long as you're not touching the ground." Because they're going to slide out of the prison by jumping onto electrical wires and slide all the way over the wall. And let me just say that when Kurt Russell does it, he falls what looks like 20 feet straight down onto his back and is not hurt. All right, I've fallen 11 feet straight down onto my back, and that hurt like a bitch. But I guess he's a tougher man than I. And then, you know, Stallone has to have his big final fight with the maniac cop, and then he gets out too. And this is where the movie kind of lost steam to me. Because this is a buddy movie, and it's been all about them kind of building their relationship. But after they break out of the prison, they make this very odd decision to go their separate ways. And that didn't make any sense to me. And all that basically happens is Stallone tells Kurt Russell that if things get too hot, stop by this club and ask for my sister. So, and the sister's played by Teri Hatcher. So it was kind of weird how they kind of went off on their own little side quest. That seemed like a mistake that the movie made. I don't know. It kind of broke the momentum of the flick, and the movie gets kind of slow there for a little bit. Then it does this bizarre thing where Kurt Russell goes to find Teri Hatcher at the bar, I guess. It looked like a strip club, but the girls don't take off their clothes. I guess maybe it's kind of like those Vegas showgirl things, but it was kind of weird. I didn't really get that. Yeah, so Teri Hatcher does this whole elaborate dance number, and then talks to Kurt Russell behind um, the back room. What is it? Dressing room. In the dressing room. So he goes and talks to Kurt Russell in the dressing room, and they have to sneak him out because the cops are looking for him there. And this leads into the dumbest joke of the entire movie. So Kurt Russell dresses up as a woman to sneak out, and the cop not only doesn't. This is like what was that old Looney Tunes joke where Bugs Bunny would dress up like a woman to trick Elmer Fudd? Like, Kurt Russell dresses up like a woman, and not only do the cops not realize he's a man, one of them hits on him. And this cop has definitely got some issues because Kurt Russell don't look like no woman. Big jawed, broad shouldered, stubbly, probably 6 foot tall. I'm pretty sure Kurt Russell's taller than Stallone because Stallone's actually kind of short. And and they get out of that, the cop wanting to hit on Kurt Russell while he's in drag, trying to sneak out by Terry Hatcher pretending they're lesbians, and it's like, stay away from my girl, and they get on this motorcycle Terry Hatcher has, and they leave. So, and then the cop says, what do you think, Captain? Dykes on bikes. I'm just sitting there thinking, like, jokes you can't make today. But, and then later on, in Terry Hatcher's apartment, Kurt Russell's hiding out, and he's still in the dress. And then there's this whole thing where Stallone busts in and doesn't realize that his captain, Stallone's former captain, I guess, is sneaking around in the backyard looking for him. So he busts in and then grabs the guy. And then they have this whole long conversation, and Kurt Russell's still in the dress. And finally, the captain's like, you should probably change. Kurt Russell's like, whatever. That was sort of funny. But yeah, then you get this leads into the big finale. So oh god, they get the Batmobile from Batman Begins, just this big black battle wagon with gun turrets and shit, from Kurt Russell's gadget guy. So they bust into Jack Palance's headquarters, and that's the thing, is that there's never really any mystery to this movie. Like, we know who the villain is, and I always think it's a problem when a movie allows the audience to be so far ahead of its lead characters, because we're waiting for Tango and Cash to figure out that Jack Palance is a shot caller. But we knew that from Jump Street. Like, we got introduced to him in the first 15 minutes of the movie. So it's like we're just waiting for them to figure out this is the bad guy, but they have no prior relationship with Jack Palance, and in fact, they only interact with him in the final scene of the movie. And even Jack Palance has complained about that. He said that in the original script, and this movie was rewritten a lot. It had a script doctor. It was one of those movies where the third act wasn't even completed when they went into production. So yeah, like I said, this is a very troubled production. And Jack Palance said that he did the movie because he was supposed to have a bunch of scenes with Stallone, and then he ended up having none. So he was actually kind of pissed off about that. But yeah, like the way that Jack Palance is just the evil guy in his office, it doesn't. They have no relationship at all, and it's kind of weird because it feels like Jack Palance should have been like the mayor, or should have been Stallone's captain or Kurt Russell's superior or something, because it's just weird how he's so disconnected from these two characters, but he's so intent on destroying them, and they never know anything about him. They don't even know what he looks like until they bust into his friggin' office, because they know about his two underbosses, James Hong's character and the Marco guy, but they don't know anything about Jack Palance until they bust into this giant headquarters of his and have a monster truck derby. I'm not exaggerating. They get into this thing with their little Batmobile, like smashing into all these other cars and these explosions. The movie goes full over the top at the end. It's just insane. It looks like a monster truck rally. It really does. And apparently, like, when the battle wagon, the Batmobile, caught on fire, it burnt too fast and they couldn't put it out. And like, Stallone was so close to the fire at one point it singed his hair. But and so then they get in and they have their final confrontation, and of course, Jack Palance has kidnapped Teri Hatcher, because all these 80s movies had to have the kidnapped damsel in distress. Sometimes it would be a kid. Sometimes it would be the lead character's kid instead of a love interest, but usually it was the girl. So of course they had to do that, and that would already have been a cliche. I was about to give it credit as maybe it wasn't as cliched in 19. No, this was already a cliche by then. So yeah, then the movie ends, and it ends with them doing this, a high five, because of course 80, so it ends with Tango and Cash doing a high five, and then you start hearing the 80, and in this type of movie, you're going to have one of three types of songs playing over the end. You're going to either have uplifting hair metal, you're going to have a rap song written specifically for the movie, where they'll be like, Tango and his boy Cash did a bit, or you're going to have one of those weird mixes where they take dialogue from the movie and like drop it into a song, like at the end of Return of the Living Dead, where it would just keep repeating certain lines from the song. But they went with an uplifting 80s hair metal band, and the movie's over. The flick, it's wise that it doesn't overstay its welcome. This is one of the, now it's just assumed that all big budget action movies are going to be like way over 2 hours, and it's nice that this movie's under 2 hours. It's nice to be able to just watch it and it not be your whole afternoon. So that's cool. But yeah, speaking of the troubled production, this movie was directed by a European director who had no resume doing this type of movie, big action movies, before or after it. I have no idea how this guy was chosen, but apparently he was fired from production. And then Stallone directed for a little while. One of the producers directed for a little while. This movie had at least 4 people working on it as a director. It had a script doctor working on it. Stallone kept changing things throughout the movie because, again, he was known for doing that. He would just kind of hijack movies that he was attached to. So yeah, this was a very troubled production, and it shows because the movie is uneven. Like I said, the the part in the prison takes place for so long that this feels like a prison movie. So when they get out, it's almost jarring. Like, oh, I thought this was going to be the rest of the movie. So, but it's a fun, entertainingly dumb movie, and I like it. And I think fans of these two actors will like it too. Also, just again, just general fans of ultra over the top hard R, and I do appreciate this is rated R, so you actually do get to see people shot, and they get to curse and that kind of thing. It's nice to not have this censored PG-13 bullshit. So yeah, overall, this is a good flick. It's honestly one of Stallone's better movies, even if it's not one of his better performances. And it's a good movie for Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell's actually been in a lot of great films, so I can't necessarily say this is one of his better movies, but it's a good one. But yeah, I do think Tango and Cash is a good movie, and it should get a special edition, Warner Brothers. I'm done.